Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Hey, psst. Hey, you see that Snickers over there? If no one's looking, you should just take it.
No! Don't listen to him, my son. That would be stealing, and stealing is a sin.
Sin Schmin, it's a friggin' Snickers bar. You deserve to have it. Sinning really satisfies you.
Repent, my child. Virtue is the only real snack worth savoring. For that candy bar is merely a gateway to nougat damnation. Has this ever happened to you?
Listening to the devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, and you're not sure what to think?
Then we're here to help. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III, and this season on All the Feelings, we're examining the 7 deadly sins.
You know, the fun ones.
And the 7 heavenly virtues.
Which are also a thing. Through personal stories, historical oddities, and way too much embarrassment, we take you on a thrilling journey through all the goods and the bads you hear about in church.
But without all that pesky church stuff. So come join us for All the Feelings Season 9, a sometimes funny podcast about being human. All the sins, all the virtues.
All in one place. Go to allthefeelings.fun to learn more, or subscribe to All the Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Game over.
Horror movies get a bad rap. They're cheap thrills, mindless gore, not cinema, blah, blah, blah.
But we here at Sitting in the Dark know better. We know that horror is more than just jump scares and chainsaws. It's a reflection of our deepest fears, our anxieties, Okay, and there's a lot of jump scares and chainsaws.
Join us, Pete Wright, Tommy Metz III, Kyle Olson, and Keenan Diaz, as we cut into the dark heart of horror cinema.
Every episode, we explore a different facet of the genre, from survival horror to home invasions, from zombies to birds. We tickle the tropes, analyze the angles, and sharpen our own axes along the way.
We'll introduce you to the classics that shaped the genre.
And the modern masterpieces that are pushing the boundaries of terror.
Sitting in the Dark is your guide to navigating the terrifying, thrilling, and sometimes hilariously bad world of horror movies.
We'll help you understand why we love to be scared.
And maybe even convert you into a horror fan yourself.
So turn off the lights, close the basement door,
and join us.
Sitting in the dark.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Surviving the game is over. Welcome to manhood.
Why would you want to kill yourself? Maybe I like the idea of choosing when I die instead of having somebody else choose for me. If someone offered you a good job, would you be interested? What kind of job are you talking about? We need someone to help us with our hunts out in the wilderness.
Are you sure about this one?
Oh, I'm sure.
Has he got courage?
Gentlemen, I would like you to meet our new hunting guide, Mason.
Here's a toast to the hunters and a prayer for the hunted. The hunt begins now.
Just let me get the door for you.
Go. We're not really gonna hunt anymore, are we?
He's nothing. He's less than nothing.
Come on, Mason! I won't take any part in this. I want you!
Think. If you make it to civilization, you live. If you don't, maybe God will have mercy.
Okay, Andy. This movie. What a bonkers movie this is. Seriously, this is bonkers. I also loved it.
Yeah. Back to our People Hunting People series, which is, it's a fun one because it does put you in a place where you're getting some interesting types of action stories and everything. And this one, I think, for me, ended up working so well because of this cast they put together. Like, it is, you got Ice-T as your lead. He's this homeless man who's suffering from depression after his wife and child were killed in a fire. So now he's homeless, and then his dog dies, and then his best friend dies. Like, his life is miserable. And then you've got Charles S. Dutton as the kind-hearted food line worker who is really only working in the food lines at this nonprofit to pick prey, to find potential targets that they can then kill. He works for Rutger Hauer, Thomas Burns, who runs this hunting organization where they have hunters pay $50,000 to come do one of these adventure hunts in the Pacific Northwest again. Anyway, he's leading this whole thing. Gary Busey is a psychologist, which is really funny, who works for the CIA, and he's one of the founding members of this team. F. Murray Abraham is this Wall Street dick who is here to not just hunt, but also to show his son how it's done. His son is William McNamara. And then, of course, we have John C. McGinley, who is an oil tycoon and who is having some serious issues of his own.
That only start with asthma.
Right, exactly. Great group of like action movie actors to put into this film that takes the whole Most Dangerous Game story and kind of kicks it up a notch.
This movie. I mean, the reason this movie succeeds. I mean, you said it, but the reason it succeeds is because Ice-T is like at the bottom of the list of most interesting things going on in this movie. Like he's great, and everything else is more bonkers in this movie. All the other performances are more bonkers, except and maybe generously William McNamara, who's just there, but everybody else is fascinating. These are some fascinating faces and some just like McGinley. This was, I wrote my review, and I have to tell you this line I'm most proud of. He's a Texas oil man who is one bad day away from screaming, "Do you know who I am?" at a barista. That's exactly John C. McGinley in this
and then taking
movie.
a puff off of his asthma inhaler.
Yes. I adore this cast. This is not this movie. I'll be interested to see if it gets any award nods later, because this is not a movie that seems award heavy, and I still had a blast.
And I think part of it is because, in our member pre-show chat, we were talking about movies that take place in the woods, and we happened to end up picking a number of them that were action-based films in the woods. And I think one of the things that ends up working in this era is casting an action film these faces are great action movie faces from the 80s and 90s that we were seeing all the time. And like, that's why I think for me, this ended up working so well, because it's just like all of these people are in other films, action films that I love from this era. Maybe not F. Murray Abraham. I don't know how many action films he ended up being in.
But he was perfect.
He was perfect. He plays a great, like, Wall Street guy who's just, trying to
wearing his little page boy hat,
trying to tell his son how life is, and like, dang, this guy is brutal. I loved it. So yeah, it's such an interesting setup for the film. And as you said, and that's just starting with Ice-T at the heart of the film as our homeless man.
Yeah, the first grand betrayal and perfect casting is Charles S. Dutton as the shelter worker, because Charles S. Dutton, what business does he have being a bad guy? Really? He's like the sweetest of the sweet guy. He's like the tough but amazing pro-humanitarian actor. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying this off the cuff. I should have looked. How many times has Charles S. Dutton played an evildoer? Maybe it's more than I think, but I think of him as a really kind person.
Yeah, or the coach in on Rudy, or not the coach, but he's not the coach. He's the groundskeeper, the inspiring groundskeeper.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's great in that. And that's like Alien 3. He's perfect as Dylan. And again, a group of really angry men, including him, except he still ends up being like the voice of reason. So
yeah, voice of reason. And so to put him in this role and make him a smiling, congenial murderer was a bit of casting sleight of hand that I think should be like a doff of the hat, because it is perfect. It is the first major casting rug pull that I experienced watching this movie.
I don't think I realized that he had retired. Did you know Dutton retired?
No.
Yeah, he hasn't acted since 2016, so almost 10 years now. I mean, he's 74, so
Yeah.
So more power to him. Yeah, I love him. And yeah, he is great as this guy that we feel like a connection to because, he is working to talk to Mason, Ice-T's character, and try to be somebody who's there to help him. Now, he's pretty suspicious right away because, he's working the food line at this shelter and he sees Ice-T walk by rejecting the food. And what does Dutton do? He jumps out of his job in the line and he chases Ice-T down to have this big talk with him in this confrontation on the street. It's like, dude, you have a job. You're supposed to be, serving food. Hello?
Nothing screams ulterior motives louder than this. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then he has the ready-made card. Like, go talk to my kind buddy Rutger Hauer.
Yeah. No, Dutton is great, but then you get to Rutger Hauer, and it's just like, as this businessman who runs this hunting organization, you just are already suspicious when you see Rutger Hauer. But I have a question before we kind of continue with the actors. I have a question because the way the film is set up, we start the film, we're following Mason, we're seeing him picking through trash, getting food, he's talking to his dog, he's talking to his friend, they're stealing some food, like a big hunk of, like a side of beef from a truck that they can eat and cook. While that is going on, we actually are getting some intercut moments of a hunt going on, of one of these situations where you see a guy running in panic through the woods and you see a group of hunters who we don't, as memory serves, we're not necessarily seeing their faces. It's more we're seeing ends of weapons and things like that. And we finally see the crossbow pointed at this guy and taking him down. How does that work for you as far as you assume people who are going into this movie know, okay, this is going to be a most dangerous game type of movie. They're going to be hunting this guy. If you saw the trailer, you would have figured it out. There are plenty of things that are going to give away. I mean, it's the plot. You need to have some sense as to what the story is. But did we need that setup at the beginning of the film?
No, I don't think we did. I think it's a leading question, and I think you agree. I don't think we needed that. I think it was an energetic way to start the film, and I think I can make a case for it in the edit, that there is something about the pace and the music. The Stuart Copeland score is outstanding, and there's something about tying all the quick cuts to the pace of the music, to the energy of the chase, that I can see getting in my head about that and making that case. But watching the movie as a whole, I think it reveals too much too early when they had something with just following Mason and his buddy and the loss of the dog and all of that. I think that just worked better to allow us to build to a higher pace later.
I think that's where I was. I felt like, I don't know if it came from New Line, like the higher ups that wanted to kind of get things moving a little quicker. It's starting too slow. We want to have some action at the beginning because otherwise it's too slow a pace. I had that sense from it that there was something about that just didn't need to be there. And who knows, it could have been Dickerson himself who wanted a little more energy in the start. I don't know, but it just really didn't feel like it needed to be there. And that was one of those bits that it just didn't seem needed, and kind of left me going, okay, I'm not exactly sure I like how the film is starting.
Yeah. Because also, I mean, you said it, like the trailer gives away a lot. But that doesn't mean it was right for the trailer to give away a lot. And there's something about like leaving it a little bit mysterious. The movie had an opportunity to leave it mysterious. Like otherwise, everybody Mason comes in contact with, from Charles S. Dutton to Rutger Hauer, like, we already know they're putting him in the funnel toward the hunt. Eventually he's going to end up in the woods. And I think that's sort of a sad state. I think the movie is better when it keeps its secrets just a dash longer.
Which for me made the actual context interesting, like once they get there and everything. And, so to that end, let's go back to the kind of talking through the cast and their roles and stuff, because Rutger Hauer, we said, is next. He's the one who basically offers Mason a job to be the wilderness expert. If there's something that you really have to buy into early on in this film to just kind of go along with so that the film itself is going to work. I think that's the biggest ask the film is making, that they're going to hire random homeless people to be wilderness survival experts for this group of hunters.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Where is the logic in that?
Yeah. It is the saddest statement on Mason's sort of mental health right there, that he is already, we know how lost he is. He tried to end his life in front of a truck, right? We know that he is bereft. And this is the case I'm making. Because I know how lost he is, I get a sense that he might say yes to anything.
Well, I think that's the case, especially when there's a price tag that comes along with it. When he finds out he's going to get $500 a week, I mean, he doesn't even know how long the job is. Is it a 1-week job? Is it 4 weeks? Is it 2 days? Like how long will he actually be there? So some of that setup was a little rushed, as far as rushed and sloppy. Like they're just kind of skirting over it because they just have to get out into the woods to kind of get the story moving.
Sloppy? What are you talking about? He passed the treadmill test, Andy. There's nothing sloppy about that.
That was really funny. The fact that they make this homeless guy, like, put him through the paces of putting him on a treadmill to prove that he can run for 30 minutes.
Yes. His grief transcends his burgeoning emphysema.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, that's Rutger Hauer, who does end up hiring him to basically do this job. Although he doesn't tell him that at the time. He shows up randomly at this hotel that he's staying in. Well, I guess he does tell him he's going to hire him. He gives him a down payment, right?
Yeah. $200?
Yeah, which he uses on the hotel and everything. But yeah, then he just kind of shows up and says, hey, we're leaving. Let's go. Got you some clothes. And off we go, off to the races as they hop in their plane and fly out into the middle of nowhere.
They do. And then they treat him well, right? And that's the next sort of rug pull in the movie, is that they feed him well. They make him eat straight from the head of a pig. And they have the weirdest dinner conversation. This is why you watch the movie.
Well, I just want to say it's really funny the way that you phrased all that. They treat him well, and they made him eat from the head of a pig. I don't think you're intending to say that was part of them treating him well.
Wait, what are you talking about? That's not how you eat every night?
Yeah. They treat him well, but they still do make him eat from the head of a pig.
Okay, the little words matter.
That's right.
But they feed him well. They give him a glass of $450 bottled wine. They all tell their stories. And this is where we get, I think you said it in your Letterboxd review, we get the future audition monologue for every actor ever. Gary Busey's.
It should be.
Yeah, it totally should be. This was absolutely fantastic. Please, I'd like to invite you all to watch Andy Nelson delivering Gary Busey's monologue from Surviving the Game.
Yeah, right. I don't think anybody could actually pull that off like Gary Busey does. It's an insane story that he tells about this scar on his face that he got as we find out from his bulldog. And it's this story. He says, I refer to this as my birthmark. Like that is because it's the story of him being born as the person that he is today.
Yeah.
And you get this story. His dad bought him a bulldog. He named him Prince Henry Stout, like great name. He fed his dog. He took care of his dog. He loved his dog. But then his dad says, you need to train your dog to be a protector. And so he gave him a bunch of cherry bombs, and he would put this dog like tied out in the yard by a dummy, and he would throw cherry bombs at it to make this dog start getting angry and attacking the dummy. And then as he gets older, like it just gets worse and worse. And his dad makes him actually fight the dog, and he ends up having to kill the dog. It's like, and then his dad's like, welcome to manhood. And it's like, wow, that's not the story that William McNamara's character is going to be walking away with after all this.
No. It's the enthusiasm with which he delivers the line, "Crack, I felt his neck break."
Yeah.
Awful.
Right, because he's acting it out. He's like really into it.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about Gary Busey before. I know I've said this before, but it's been a long time. I want to remind everybody that Gary Busey and Gaylord Sartain did comedy on public access in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1974. And I just put a link to a YouTube video of their Coach Chuck video. Public access comedy from Gary Busey and Gaylord Sartain. I mean, you need to watch these things back to back because they're exactly what you might expect.
That's funny. I'm going to have to check that out. And do we know who Gaylord Fontaine is?
Gaylord Sartain. Gaylord Sartain. Gaylord Sartain. I think he went on to. I think he went on to Hee Haw.
Okay.
He was funny. He's a funny guy. You'll know him when you see him.
I'll recognize him. Gotcha.
Yeah.
He's one of those faces. Yeah.
Yep.
What's interesting about the monologue that Busey has here is that he wrote the whole thing himself. It was actually a moment where we're getting a sense of kind of like the butting of heads and who's really running this group and stuff. And Rutger Hauer, he told this story that it was a scene where his character, Rutger Hauer's character, was supposed to put Gary Busey's character in his place in this conversation. Busey said, "Hey, I have this monologue or this thing I wrote. I wanted to try it out." Rutger Hauer thought that he was just trying to steal the scene, so tried throwing some responses into this, but it didn't play well. Dickerson so loved this monologue that he came up with that he ended up kind of keeping the whole thing in. And so it's just fun to see that this whole thing is just out of Busey's crazy mind.
Yeah. God. That he's the psychiatrist of the group.
Yeah. Right. But CIA psychiatrist. And you hear that, you're like, okay.
Yeah. Right. I think one time he does say, "How does that make you feel?" Which really lets you bury yourself in the part. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lots of fun. I had a great time with that whole thing. Just everything with the dinner sequence was a lot of fun because, again, as you said, they are pushing and testing Mason to try to get a sense as to who this guy is, how far can we push him, and how far can we take this guy? You know, we're getting a little bit of his backstory about his wife and daughter and how they had died. He just says he killed them, which really sets McGinley off because, as we learned, McGinley, his own daughter had been murdered, apparently also by an African American. And later he's just like, "It could have been you for all I know." Like he's, kind of going off the deep end with all of this. And then Abraham is also kind of pushing and testing, and it made for a really fun scene. Like the whole thing with the cigarettes where Mason asks for a cigarette and Doc's just like, "Take the pack." He's just like, "Oh, I don't want the pack. I just want one." He's like, "Well, then I'm going to throw them away. I've got another pack." Like it's like weird psychological games that this group of guys is playing with Mason just to kind of like test him out. It's like, like poking him with sticks before they kill him to get his adrenaline pumping or something.
Oh, that's exactly right. That's right. You do get the feeling that he's in a metaphorical cage, but a cage nonetheless, and they're poking him. That's great.
Fascinating group of people. So anyway, who else do we want to talk about? We talked much about F. Murray Abraham and his kind of role as the dad who brings his son here for the experience of a lifetime, not telling his son what they're doing. I don't know. How did that play for you?
It felt to me right on the money. Like it felt like exactly a thing this sort of whelp of a dad would do, because he never felt like one of the guys. He felt like he was coerced into being one of the guys and bought into it. And now he's trying to coerce his son into being one of the guys because he thinks he should. I found that really believable. And I think F. Murray Abraham was the guy to pull that part off. And I should say, I felt like his son was a perfect chip off the old block, like the kid who, he almost comes to terms with it until that very end. He says, "I'll help you." And then you and I are very different. You kind of realize William McNamara comes to his senses. And I thought that was a lovely relationship between those two guys. So I am a big fan of F. Murray Abraham. His face in this movie is perfect as the lesser of all the alpha hunters trying to out alpha each other. And it was a deep surprise to see him in this movie.
That was, and that's, I think, a great point, because you think of F. Murray Abraham, and I don't know, my brain always goes to things where he is like Salieri in Amadeus, or the way that he plays, I can't remember if he's the dean or the head of the school or whatever he is in Finding Forrester, right? The one where he is the sort of person who seems like very erudite, and he's like the in charge of things as kind of an erudite professor or a businessman or a president of something. And so to see him as this Wall Street guy made perfect sense. But that little shift that they have of saying he's also the sort who's going to pay to go hunt a human being, it's like that actually made it really interesting for me. I liked that, the way that they brought that into his character, because I don't expect that sort of thing with Abraham.
He's in a couple of more recent things that I just want to shout out. First, he's C.W. Longbottom on Mythic Quest, and he's just perfect in those first couple of seasons as, I think, this character, right? Like he's playing what this guy ends up being old doing, like kind of falling apart. He's crazy and eccentric, and he plays the same character on season 2 of The White Lotus, where he's the pervy granddad. And he's just like, he's a guy who's entitled based on whatever context he's in, whether it's in, as a science fiction fantasy author, believing himself to be better than he is, or as this pervy granddad believing himself to be a better family man than he ever was. He is here believing himself to be better than he ever was as a father and maybe as a businessman. It is a roundly terrible financial decision to spend this kind of money to do this. Let's just say, that probably came out wrong. You should never spend any money. Nope, that's not it. Don't kill people. Let's start with that.
It's like, how are you gonna get there?
Yeah, no, there's no way to get there. I believe in not killing people.
Oh man, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I mean, and to think that he's bringing his son, so he is forking out $100,000 to go do this trip. Pretty crazy. And just like so arrogant to assume that his son, like without ever having like tested his son in any way, like verbally or having conversations at home, just to figure out, is his son going to flip out about this and like take him to court, or like what is his son going to do as they go through this process? Like that's not the sort of thing that you just casually decide, unless you are an arrogant ass who just assumes, my son will be just like me.
Well, Andy, isn't it the same thing that we get from Gary Busey, right? This is another relationship of a father-son told from the perspective this time of the son, who was abused by his father and made to do things that he did not want to do. And we don't get that story from every one of these characters, but I'll bet every one of these characters' backstory has that in it. It's one of those sort of central themes is, who do we become if not our fathers? What are the shackles we have to shake free to not become the worst parts of our dads?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's never brought up, but it does make you wonder, like, what is the backstory with Rutger Hauer, Charles S. Dutton, John C. McGinley? What are the stories that brought them to this? Because it's definitely a place that, like a dark place that people have to get to in order to make this decision. Like, I'm bored with hunting boar.
Yeah. And a piece that we get a little bit later, like in terms of this movie being an adaptation of an original short story, and in the spirit of the movie, the original film that we watched, they kept the heads. During the hunt, Ice-T goes back to the cabin and breaks into the locked door, and we have the heads, the trophy room. I loved that they kept the heads. It is a truly sociopathic example of these guys and the way they have made toxic their manhood. I actually think it works better than in the original. I think it works better here.
What's interesting about it, I mean, it's just as gruesome, and it definitely becomes one of those tropes that you kind of want to see them continue in different iterations of this story of the most dangerous game, because it is brutal when you actually get to that point where you see this trophy room that they're keeping behind locked doors in their cabin. It also makes you wonder, because I mean, obviously it's not the same group of guys coming back time after time. Does the person who actually kill the person they're going after, do they not get to keep it themselves? Or do they specifically say, we're going to keep it here because you're going to get, if you put it in your living room, someone's going to see it and you're going to bring the whole thing down. Like, it's yours, but it's here on display in this, quote, safe place.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the only way I can rationalize it. I don't think you keep this kind of trophy.
No. Yeah, right.
But look at the confidence, like the disgusting level of confidence that they have in their game, that one of the things that Mason discovers is an empty jar with his name already embossed on it.
Yeah, right. Very, very sure of themselves they are.
Oh, so bad.
Yeah. Well, you do definitely get a sense from the place that these characters are coming from that you know that Doc works for the CIA, right? Like, that's his background. But you do start getting this sense that Cole and Burns also were like black ops or something. Just like the way that they handle themselves seems like there's something. They're obviously ex-military, but there's something about like this background that they came up through the military in a way where they just have much less of a consideration for human life at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think Doc says as much. Like, I know these two inside and out, right? He was their CIA therapist.
Right. Exactly. That's the whole thing. That's right. He was their shrink.
It does make you wonder a little bit, like, who was the mastermind? Like, Rutger Hauer is sort of credited as the mastermind behind the whole thing. But the psychiatrist really is in my head, the psychiatrist is the guy who's ultimately started the whole thing. He's in control. He's the manipulator.
And that's a great point, because he obviously knew that they had elements in their past that he saw as an opportunity to, quote, help them out, and probably put it in their heads. This is what we should do. This will get you through whatever PTSD, whatever nightmares you're having, whatever. Let's kind of figure that out. The only aspect of their background that I don't know if I fully understand is how Burns also is a master of disguise, because he, at the end of the film, in order to escape, like, I don't know what that outfit is. He like disguises himself as like
an Orthodox Russian priest.
Yeah, right. To slip out of the country. Like, what a strange costume decision to go with. And one that's kind of complex and honestly a little more noticeable, like maybe go with something that doesn't stand out as much.
Andy, you know what they say in the company? They say, if you can't hide it, hang a flag on it. That's exactly what he did here. He just hung a flag on it, and he's now standing out in the best way. When she says, "Oh, Father, could you bless me?" He kisses her forehead, and she says, "Give me some cash." He says, "Get lost." Like, what a great exchange.
Oh my gosh!
So that's that trio of Rutger Hauer, Charles Dutton, Gary Busey. Interestingly, it is Gary Busey who goes first. I did not expect that. Gary Busey goes when the house explodes, after Ice-T goes back and sets it ablaze, blows it up. I did not expect Gary Busey to be gone halfway through the movie. And I wonder sort of strategically, like in the spirit of character economy and ego economy, how he was written out against a character like Rutger Hauer's playing, because Rutger Hauer is the other most strong persona there. If I see either of those two guys together in a movie, it's almost unsustainable. Like, you got to get one of them out of there.
Well, it's interesting. First off, I just have to say, Ice-T got back to that cabin ridiculously fast. Like, it was a little unbelievable how fast that happened. But no, it's actually interesting, because the screenwriter, Eric Berndt, actually expressed at some point after the film came out that he regretted killing off Doc so early in the film. And he said if he had the chance to redo it, he would actually kill off F. Murray Abraham at that point and then have Doc take over a father figure role for William McNamara's character. The speculation is because Abraham had won an Oscar that he had the opportunity to be the character that was going to live longer and everything. But who knows? Who knows?
It was unsatisfying.
Well, his death was unsatisfying. Yeah, everything about that. I was like, oh, yeah, because especially after that speech, I wanted him to last longer.
I did. And you know what I really wanted was I wanted our trio of CIA guys to be the last three. They needed to be the last three. To your point, or to the writer's point, like losing John C. McGinley, the way we lost him was fine. I liked him being kidnapped. I thought that was great. And losing William McNamara and F. Murray Abraham early, that fatherly vengeance angle was less satisfying than the craziness of Gary Busey on screen.
Yeah.
I think we could have had all of that happen much earlier, save Gary Busey, and let the three of them be as explosive as they need to be in the hunt for Ice-T.
Well, yeah, and I think that could have been interesting. I do, we should say, I mean, there are plenty of problems with this film, too. This is far from a perfect film. One of my issues with this film is, we've got these supposed hunters who are very bad at actually showing us ever that they know how to actually stalk and hunt prey. They are so loud when they're tracking him down. It's how are they even hearing anything? If they're not riding their four-wheelers and motorcycles through the woods. And I like how they threw in that one quick line from Dutton as they're racing through the woods on four-wheelers. He says, oh, how can you not see his tracks? This guy, what is, it's you're going so fast. How do you see footprints in leaves? My goodness, that I had a hard time buying ever that these guys were actually good at it because they were noisy. And it's Ice-T is going to have a very easy time getting away from you because you basically are the worst people at being sneaky in a forest setting.
Well, and I think it's because so much of the story, on one side, it's Ice-T and his sort of thematic search for survival and resilience, right? He's coming back from great grief, and this is an example of him, or this is an opportunity for him to exude control. And these other guys are an example of class divide, right? Social inequality, and they didn't use the word woke once in this movie, but you can kind of hear how they were thinking it. It just hadn't become a thing for them to be upset about. This was guys who were entitled, and they were exploring their entitlement. And entitlement doesn't have to be quiet because the world bends to them. That's what I think is so funny about this movie, is just how well it captures these guys whose confidence comes from entitlement and not skill.
Well, and that's, I think, a very valid point. And I think, if anything, I think it would have helped to actually demonstrate that a little better because they still were doing a pretty good job at staying close to where Mason was anytime that he was, running through the woods.
It was still easy.
Yeah, it was still easy for them. And I would like that to have played a little more realistically, because your point is very valid and absolutely part of the point of the story. But then give us a sense that part of the reason some of these hunts might actually be difficult is because they're really not great hunters. They're just cocky and arrogant and assume they're going to be able to defeat these homeless people.
Well, and that was the next bit of kind of silliness. I applaud the vault of heads. How is this, with all those heads, how is this the first time they've actually had an accident, right? How is this the first time that they've had somebody that they weren't able to catch right away? Because they're idiots. Their entitlement leads to idiocy.
Yeah, especially because, they gave him, they're going to take a leisurely breakfast. So however long their leisurely breakfast was, that's how much of a head start Mason had to start running through the woods. A person could, say that it's, leisurely breakfast, half hour, maybe? A person could actually get pretty far away. And if there were these bozos who really weren't good at tracking, that person could probably assuming they're good at hiding, they could probably hide pretty well. Now, sure, they may not be able to survive for days in the woods, and that would, I would assume, end up being their downfall, the fact that they start starving and start making some dumb decisions, and lo and behold, they end up getting caught and killed. But then show us that. Like, we see that opening hunt in the beginning of the film, and it just seems like it seems more like a chase. Like, they're not really hunting anybody. It's just like, let him go, and now we're after him and we're going to shoot him. Like, that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And he was, and they you know, it just feels to me like that he would have found something. There is a moment in the movie where Charles S. Dutton looks back at the crew and says, he thinks we won't go in the water. And I laughed out loud at that moment, because they've demonstrated so little aptitude at figuring out how to actually chase this guy. He was this homeless, you know, in quotes, this homeless guy has bested them around almost every corner and is really good, obviously, in a fight that he took on Gary Busey, who is just, you know, sinew and alcohol, drugs.
Well, and he's also got his war paint on. He's wearing his Native American, deerskin coat.
Right.
Like, yeah, just a little crazy.
Awful.
A little crazy. And so, yeah, there were some issues like that. I don't fault the film so much for some issues they have with, like, you know, it's difficult shooting a film on location like this and having the time of day not always matching up. Like, it's hard to say, okay, we're going to shoot this during the day, and then you have like bright light shining down on please, harsh shadows, and then suddenly it feels like it's a little closer to evening, and then it's more of a, you know, midday, and then sunrise. Like, it's bouncing all over the place. I didn't have I gave them a little more leeway on that, but it is one of those things that it jumps around time-wise quite a bit as we're watching the course of the film.
The location is not terribly far from my fair home, Lake Wenatchee and the Wenatchee National Forest and Entiat, Washington. It is east a couple of hours from Seattle, and very near Leavenworth, which is a lovely Germanic town in Washington, and I highly recommend visiting if you get this on your docket.
But not Oregon, as they say in the film.
No, it is not Oregon. It is not Oregon.
It's Washington for Oregon.
Definitely Washington for Oregon.
Although they also use Philadelphia for Seattle. Did you catch that?
Oh my God. Yeah.
They're filming in Washington, but for some reason, when they show the shot toward the end of the movie where it's like 5 days later, it's a shot of Philadelphia instead of actual Seattle. And I even wrote in my notes, interesting that they choose to show Seattle, but not show the Space Needle, because that's like the most prominent feature. And I'm like, wonder where this is. I'm like, Philadelphia? What were these guys doing?
I know. That is so dumb. And it's not even just the Space Needle. Like, the Seattle skyline, it has its own kind of identity. It's one of those cities that has an identity to it. And so, it is what it is.
Apparently, it's never been revealed as to why they used, I don't know if it was just a stock shot that they had of a city that they threw in there. A lot of people have questioned that, but nobody really knows. Just one of those strange things.
Anyone else you want to talk about?
Well, we should talk about the director a little bit. We haven't talked about Ernest Dickerson. Dickerson started as a cinematographer, which is, I think, where I first knew him, because he worked with Spike Lee on, like, Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershop, We Cut Heads, and She's Gotta Have It, but then also shooting things like The Brother from Another Planet and Eddie Murphy Raw. And so it was definitely somebody... and Do the Right Thing, we probably brought him up on that because he, again, in all the films that he was doing with Spike Lee, Malcolm X also, and then shifted to directing in 92, which he started with Juice, which he co-wrote, or no, I think he just wrote and directed. Yeah, and then from that point forward has been kind of directing films. Surviving the Game was his second feature. Demon Knight, one of
Tales from the Crypt,
is a not necessarily great, but Tales from the Crypt film. It was fun, not necessarily great, but yeah, they did that. Bulletproof, Ambushed, Blind Faith, Bones was one of those interesting films that it's kind of a supernatural film with Snoop Dogg, and Never Die Alone, and then Double Play, along with a lot of TV stuff. So yeah, Dickerson, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I know that I know of Dickerson because of his contributions to Dexter and The Walking Dead. He's not one of those single kind of run and gun directors who comes on for just an episode. He did, a dozen episodes of The Walking Dead or something, and another almost that many of Dexter. And I think he has a stamp on particular arcs in those shows, which that's compelling to me.
Same with Bosch. A lot of episodes on Bosch. And The Wire.
And The Wire, exactly. Bosch is new to me. I've been told many times I need to get on the Bosch train, and I just never have. But The Wire, for sure.
Sure. I like Dickerson. I haven't seen as many of the films that he's directed, but probably more stuff that he's DP'd. I think now with this, I've seen 4 of his films. I like what he's doing. I don't know if this stands out. Like I don't feel like I've seen anything that I would call a Dickerson stamp. In kind of the scope of it, but I think as a DP who has shifted to directing, I think that he's shown that he can, tell a good story.
Oh, clearly. I think he's great. He's got just with all the TV work, of course, he's got a ton of credits, 75 directorial credits. And I think this movie is bonkers. As a second film, I had a blast, right? Like this was for sure of the era. Is it doing anything I wouldn't expect for a 90s violent action movie in the woods? No, it's right across the bow. This is exactly what I'd expect.
Yeah. Bojan Bozelli was the DP for this. One of those DPs who just worked a lot through the 90s and aughts. And, things like Deep Cover for Bill Duke right before this, and The Body Snatchers, Abel Ferrara one, California, the Brad Pitt movie, all the way up through things like The Lone Ranger and Pete's Dragon and Snake Eyes, Underwater. So, I think a DP that's been around doing all sorts of interesting work.
For sure.
We didn't really talk about Ice-T much. How does Ice-T strike you as a leading man?
I mentioned that he's maybe the second least interesting thing going on in the movie. I think he was fine. Like, you can tell he was he just felt like he was figuring stuff out. It felt so like he just didn't live up to the characters that we got in The Hunting Party. Like, he just doesn't, he just didn't feel like he was as compelling to watch for me as either of those guys.
But does he hold his own against them? Because it's a pretty big group of personalities and 80s action stars.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But does he hold his own against them? I guess. I don't have strong opinions about Ice-T's performance in this. And I like Ice-T, and he's done some things that I think are legit great performances. I would not put this up there as a Hall of Fame performance from Ice-T.
I think it was a fine performance. Yeah, I didn't love it. I think that he has been in some interesting films. Through the era, I really enjoy a lot of different things that he's been in. I think he does hold his own against them. It's hard against these characters because they're such interesting characters, but I actually enjoyed him quite a bit as the lead. But to your point, I don't know if anyone else would have been able to do better. I think it's a tricky part that isn't given quite as much fun as the villains have. But I liked him. I felt that I could feel the kind of depression that he was going through, the struggles. Like I bought into it.
Yeah. There's just no way. I think it's very, very difficult to catalog Ice-T's performances that are outside of Law and Order SVU. The dude has been on that show for 25 years.
Yeah.
That is an astounding career. And some of his best work is in that show. And I'm not even a huge fan of that show, but I think it's just, it's, important to note that he's made a career of a single television property in addition to like 90 other films that he's done. He's incredible. So does he hold his own? Sure, he's fine in this movie, but it was also pretty early in his career, and he's gone on to to be an incredible contributor to the field.
But Pete, he was in Breakin' and Breakin' 2.
Electric Boogaloo. I know. I almost mentioned that myself, but I felt it was better for you to do it.
Great movie. Rutger Hauer is always great. I just have to point out there was one fantastic nod to Blade Runner in here, and that's like a late in the film shot of him where there's something blew up, and you just see kind of the reflection in his eyes that is like exactly out of Blade Runner with kind of like the replicant eye reflection. I was like, what a nice little touch that Dickerson threw in to kind of like...
What was that when he had put the war paint on and he was in the bushes watching them fight and blow each other up?
Yeah.
That was the one that really struck me, that when everything's dark, you just see the light. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, he plays that so well.
Yeah.
I just want to throw out one last little nod. Jeff Corey plays the homeless pal that Mason has. Jeff Corey is one of these faces who has been in films like since the 30s. And we have talked about him on a few films. I don't know if we've talked about him so much, but he was in The Killers. We talked about that film last year. And then he popped up in The Boston Strangler, which we talked about recently. He's one of the people that they bring in question. He was in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, a lot of movies that we have talked about on the course of the show. This was right toward the end of his career. He was working in films into the late 90s and then into about 2000 and then passed away in 2002. But one of those faces that is just that guy in so many movies over the decades.
Since the 30s.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Starting out as a thug, 1938 in I Am the Law.
Yeah, amazing.
Crazy stuff, yeah.
I got to shout out Stuart Copeland one more time. Because you didn't get to talk about Stuart Copeland.
Yeah, you said that, and I'm glad you brought it back up, because I wrote down in my notes early on, I'm like, I'm liking what the music is doing. And then later I'm like, wow, the music sure fell off the tracks.
What?
By the time we got later in the film, I'm just like, this music does not fit with me. Like with the scenes, like with the action and stuff. It just felt like, I don't know. I had a harder time with the score as the film progressed.
I'm a legit fan of Stuart Copeland, and I think I'm a little bit soft on him because, well, the Police, obviously, but the Equalizer theme is one of my favorite. The original Equalizer theme is one of my favorite pieces of scoring that he's ever done.
Well, and certainly like somebody who's done a lot of film work.
So much. Yeah.
Yeah. Starting with Coppola's Rumblefish. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he's done over the decades that I enjoy. It's just like this one started good and then I was like, oh okay.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Next time you're lost in the woods, see what kind of music hits your head.
There you go. All right. Well, I guess that's everything. So we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Idoke, Carlos Santarita, Vyacheslav Draganov, Oriol Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. You wake up in the middle of the woods. No map, no compass, just the eerie silence of the trees and the unsettling feeling that something is watching. You reach for your radio, but all you hear is static. Panic sets in. You need supplies, something to keep you warm, something to remind you who you are, something to show the world you survived. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you spot it.
a clearing, a beacon of hope, a destination carved from legend. The True Story Merch Store. You step forward, drawn by the glow of expertly crafted tees, mugs, hoodies, and gear inspired by every show in the True Story podcast universe, from the next reel to Marvel Movie Minute and beyond. Your fingers graze over the soft fabric of a premium hoodie, its design whispering of cinematic adventures and deep-dive discussions. A stainless steel mug catches your eye, perfect for sipping your victory coffee after your next harrowing escape. You load up, because this is survival, this is storytelling, this is legendary gear for legendary listeners. Don't get lost. Find your way to truestory.fm/merch. And remember, only the prepared survive. All right. Awards season, Andy. Did it get any awards, or was it a perfect movie all on its own?
I guess it will be a perfect movie all on its own. Well, no, and that's not completely fair. It didn't get any awards at the time. It's probably not the sort of movie that was going to be getting any awards anyway. That being said, in 2016, there were the All Deaf Movie Awards, the ADMAs. This was an award show that lasted 2 years. It recognizes actors in movies that are often overlooked by other award shows. Russell Simmons created this in response to the Academy's failure to nominate any actors of color for 2 years in a row. Their goal was to be more diverse and inclusive. You know, that whole DEI thing that we're hearing so much about these days. I'm all for it, but yeah, I don't know. It wasn't something that really was sustainable, unfortunately. This film was nominated in 2016, the first year that it ran, for Best Black Survivor in a Movie. Ice-T was nominated. It wasn't just of the year, it was of any year. And so Ice-T ended up losing to Ice Cube in Anaconda.
Well, at least they kept it to the chilled of the Black survivors in film.
Those who are iced.
And,
exactly.
You know, I could see either one of those guys winning that award, frankly.
Yes. I can't remember if Ice Cube had as good a final last line of the film as Ice-T gets here, because that was a fun Chekhov's loaded gun moment that
really
we had
good
there at the end of the film. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, how to do at the box office. I hope it made as much money as fills my heart right now for this movie.
Well, for Dickerson's homeless hunting movie, he had a budget of $7.4 million, or $15.8 million in today's dollars. The movie opened April 15th, 1994, opposite Cops and Robertsons, White Fang 2, Myth of the White Wolf, and the limited release of Backbeat. This landed in 9th place and never got higher than that. Still, it managed to make a profit, barely, earning $7.7 million or $16.5 million in today's dollars. None of that is inclusive, likely, of prints and advertising, but since that's not what they're giving me, I'm going to say, hey, it made a tiny profit. Lands with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $7,295. Hey, it landed in the green.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it. That's great. Good for a movie.
Fun movie. Good for a movie. It's a fun movie. I had fun with it in the scope of these people hunting people stories. It worked. It played in that exactly what I wanted out of a 90s action movie.
It's exactly what I could not say it better myself.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, closing out our People Hunting People series. It's Daniel Minahan's 2001 satire on reality television, Series 7, The Contenders.
Everyone gets a number at birth. Your number comes up. They know where you live. They come in the night.
We're here to help you.
Bearing gifts.
You can't do this.
Now all you have to do is stay alive.
It's kill or be killed.
I'm going to win.
Meet the contenders. Dawn, Jeff, Connie, Lindsay, Tony, Franklin.
Just watch your back, because Tony's coming.
One will win.
I'm a survivor.
The rest will die.
What happened?
Series 7.
Just thought I'd look these people up, psych them out.
The highest rated series in television history.
I hate you!
Just got too big for your living room.
there's a bomb in your house and it's going to blow in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They're real people.
I'm gonna get you, Connie!
In real danger. In a fight for their lives.
Can you shut that off, please?
There's not enough light.
Yeah, well, why don't you go first then? All right, now I can't see anything.
It's too hot for TV.
Innocent people are gonna get hurt here.
And it's coming to a theater near you.
That means you, assholes!
Oh my God, they're here! Let them in! Please, let them in!
07.
The game is real.
I saw you on TV. I love you.
As I make my way through the lush, verdant forests of Washington State, my binoculars at the ready, I can't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. The gentle rustling of leaves, the soft chirping of birds. It's like a symphony of nature, and I'm lucky enough to have a front row seat. Oh, look! There in the branches of that towering Douglas fir. It's a Steller's jay with its striking blue plumage and jet black head. What a beauty. And over there, flitting amongst the bushes, a black-capped chickadee. Its cheerful song never fails to bring a smile to my face. But wait, what's that? Could it be? Yes, I think it is. A varied thrush with its bold orange and black markings. It's not every day you spot one of these shy, elusive creatures. I feel like I've stumbled upon a hidden gem, a treasure nestling deep within these woods. And there, perched upon a mossy log, is a sight that takes my breath away. It's the Next Reel's membership program in all its glory. The way the sunlight catches its exclusive content. The way its ad-free episodes glisten like dew on a spider's web. It's simply stunning. I've heard tales of this rare and wondrous creature whispered amongst film lovers in hushed, reverent tones. They say that for just $5 a month or $55 an entire year, you can gain access to a world of cinematic wonders, early releases, bonus content, and a community of like-minded souls who share your passion for the silver screen. As I watch, transfixed, the membership program seems to beckon to me, its plumage shimmering with the promise of untold delights. I feel an irresistible urge to reach out, to become a part of something greater than myself. With trembling hands, I navigate to truestory.fm/join, my heart racing with anticipation. This is it. This is my chance to join the ranks of the Next Reel's most devoted followers, to immerse myself in a world of film and friendship. As I complete my membership, I feel a rush of joy, of belonging. I know that I've found something special here amid the towering trees and the chattering birds. A place where cinema and nature intertwine, where the magic of the movies is as real and tangible as the earth beneath my feet. And so, with my membership secured and my heart full of wonder, I continue my journey through the forest, my eyes and ears open to the beauty that surrounds me. The birds, the trees, the films, they're all a part of this grand tapestry, this glorious dance of life, and I am grateful, so very grateful, to be a part of it all.
Letterboxd, Andy. Oh, Letterboxd. That's where we put our stars and hearts on the line. Letterboxd.com/thenextreels, where you can find our HQ page. What are you going to do?
This is a fun, easy watch. You know, it's a 90s action joy that I have just putting a movie like this on and just letting it just flow over me. It's just a lot of fun. Yeah, there are some story problems, but, you know, it's easy to just look past those and just have a good time. 3 stars and a heart is where I land with this bad boy.
I am absolutely right there with you. 3 stars and a heart, and I will be revisiting this movie at some point. It's crazy, and I am here for it.
That's right. Well, that will average out to 3 stars and a heart over on our Letterboxd account, which, as Pete said, is at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Surviving the Game? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always do it.
All right, what'd you do? High, low, activity?
I went just a skosh higher than us. 3.5 and a heart by Ira Brooker, who had this to say. Everybody remembers this as, quote, that Ice-T gets hunted by crazy rich dudes movie, end quote. But I don't think enough people remember it as, quote, that Ice-T gets hunted by Gary Busey, Rutger Hauer, John C. McGinley, Charles S. Dutton, and F. Murray Abraham movie, end quote. That's a tough bill to top. Completely agree, Ira. Completely agree.
Completely agree. You made a comment about that last line, and so I bring you this entry into the top 5 last lines in cinema history. Dave Edwards, who says this. Number 1, Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Naturally, Casablanca.
Good. Yep.
2, I'm finished.
Yep.
There Will Be Blood. Outstanding.
That's a good one. Yep.
Now, where was I? Memento. 2000, outstanding. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. Sunset Boulevard, outstanding. And 5, always check the barrel. Surviving the Game. It is a perfect end to this movie. P.S. Those 2 guys in the motel Ice-T checks into in the first act are the most authentic extras in movie history. Yes. P.P.S. The red eye effect used on Rutger Hauer's character in the third act is a fantastic Blade Runner reference and an incredibly effective stylistic choice by Dickerson. Totally on board with that. P.P.P.S. Busey's dinner table monologue is the perfect blend of crazy pants actor and crazy pants backstory. Chef's kiss. Could not agree more. Outstanding.
Lots of comments about Busey's monologue and how great it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. 4 stars by Ricky Wade. Gary Busey's show-stopping soliloquy about training and then murdering his family pet is the closest 90s action movies ever came to Shakespeare.
Perfect. Thanks, Letterboxd.